When it comes to January 6th, 2021, where do our two Ohio candidates for the U.S. Senate stand? In the video description, as always, I'll have lots of links if you want to do a deeper dive into any of these issues. So the ways that I'm going to look at this are on this table, and I'm going to walk through each one of these things and look at our candidates. Again, if you don't know what I mean by any of these specific issues, I have lots of links in the video description to help you out. So at the time of January 6th, 2021, Sherrod Brown was a U.S. Senator representing Ohio, and Jon Husted was Lieutenant Governor of Ohio. This means that Sherrod Brown was at the Capitol building when this happened, and Jon Husted was not. And so, going to our table. First question, did either of our two candidates actively participate in the events of January 6th, 2021? Sherrod Brown? No. Jon Husted? No. Okay, so immediately following what happened on January 6th, like that day or the day after, what did each of them say or do? So, Sherrod Brown, again, because he was there during January 6th, he said on social media, quote, "My staff and I are safe. The violence at the Capitol needs to end now. The lives of countless workers, journalists, staff, and Capitol Police are being put at risk by this attack on our democracy." The next day, Sherrod Brown released a statement, which I have on the screen here. It's long, but he does essentially say, and he is calling for the 25th Amendment because he thinks that President Trump should be held accountable for inciting this attack on our country. Okay, Jon Husted on January 6th, and again, he wasn't there because he was Lieutenant Governor of Ohio at the time. On January 6th, he said on social media, quote, "What's going on inside the U.S. Capitol looks like what we would see in a third world nation. It does not look like America. It is not patriotic. The constitutional, peaceful transfer of power is what makes America special. What's happening right now is a sad day for America." Okay, so longer after January 6th, so the day of, on January 6th, I have noted that a lot of politicians said one thing, and then 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, they sort of changed their stance or adjusted their stance. And so what did our two boys do, right? So Sherrod Brown has vocally kept the same stance. Basically what he said is basically what he meant, and he's basically kept the same stance. Jon Husted has become quite silent on the issue. So he said what he said on January 6th and has otherwise been pretty quiet. All right, so who or what do each of our candidates blame for what happened on January 6th, 2021? So Sherrod Brown, he thinks that Donald Trump and elected officials who continue to carry out the lie that the 2020 election was stolen is what sparked the events of January 6th. So, quoting him here, "A number of people that actually did real damage and assaulted police officers attacked others. Some of them are going to prison for a little while, but the people behind this have not been held accountable." Okay, and so Jon Husted, for who or what he blames for January 6th, pretty silent now. Initially, he called on Donald Trump to restore order, but now it's notable to me, he avoids assigning any direct blame. So Donald Trump pardoned all of the people that were convicted of wrongdoing on January 6th. So some of these people were convicted of violent wrongdoing, and some were convicted of nonviolent wrongdoing. And some people were on trial or going to be on trial soon. And President Donald Trump pardoned all of them.
Of pardons and commutations relating to events that occurred on January 6th, 2021.
Okay, and how many people is this?
I think this order will apply to approximately 1,500 people, sir.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutations?
Full pardon.
And so my question is, what was the response of Sherrod Brown to this pardoning, and what was the response of Jon Husted? So Sherrod Brown has been highly critical of these pardons. He has characterized them as a very dangerous subversion of the justice system, and he has characterized it as sort of an endorsement of political violence. Quote, shocking, pardon the perpetrators and purge the prosecutors offensive. And he's argued that the executive branch has been reorganized to stand on the side of, quote, autocratic political violence. So Sherrod Brown sees the events of January 6th as political violence to the utmost degree, and he's very critical of pardoning all of these January 6th people that were found guilty and were put in jail. He's not a fan of pardoning the perpetrators, if you will. Jon Husted, crickets. I couldn't find anything on anything of him saying anything about the pardons by Donald Trump. So for the next question, should Donald Trump be impeached for, quote, inciting an insurrection on January 6th, 2021? So Donald Trump was impeached twice. And so where do our two candidates stand on that and this Trump, quote, inciting an insurrection? So for Sherrod Brown, again, he was in Congress at the time. He voted guilty during the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump, which happened on February 13th, 2021. Sherrod Brown consistently argued that the president's rhetoric and actions leading up to the attack constituted, quote, incitement of insurrection. Additionally, he has said many of his Republican colleagues in the Senate know the president is, quote, reckless and unfit. However, they were afraid to remove him from office because they were worried about what might happen to them if they do. Jon Husted, putting crickets in here again. I really looked very hard to see if I could find any sort of opinion of Jon Husted's on the second impeachment of Donald Trump based on the events of January 6th, and I'm finding nothing, just silence. Okay, so this last one is somewhat more recent and has been in the news, but I know people have had a lot of opinions about it and thoughts on it. And so my question is, how did Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted respond to the idea of a slush fund? So this is, quote, the anti-weaponization fund. This slush fund of money for payouts to January 6th participants. So again, these are people from January 6th who were found guilty, put in jail, or were going to be on trial or were currently on trial, blanket pardoned by Donald Trump. And then recently, and I'll have links in the video description to explain more about the nuance of this, but basically Donald Trump wanted to create a slush fund, which would be like a pool of money for the January 6th participants to repay them for hardship and whatnot from everything that happened on January 6th. So Sherrod Brown, he has viewed this slush fund as part of a broader, quote, purge and pardon strategy that undermines the work of federal law enforcement and regular law enforcement. He argues that using taxpayer dollars, so that's our dollars, you and me, using our money to fill the slush fund to compensate people who assaulted police officers and attacked the democratic process. And Sherrod Brown finds that morally and legally indefensible. So how does he feel about the slush fund? Sherrod Brown feels big thumbs down, don't like it. Jon Husted, when asked about the potential for the slush fund to make payouts to January 6th participants, he indicated that he was seeking more information. So his quote is, I just have strong concerns about it. I'm going to be asking more questions about it this week, trying to get answers so they can understand it better, but I'll just leave it at that. So there was a vote in the Senate about this slush fund, and right now, when this happened, Jon Husted is in the Senate, and Jon Husted voted no on the slush fund. So here is our filled out table on how our two Senate candidates stand on January 6th, 2021 things. And like I've said several times, if you want more information on any of these things, I really do have a lot of links in the video description so you can watch videos and read over things on your own. And then, as I always do, you will also have in the video description links to Ohio voter registration stuff, checking your registration, what are the different dates for voting in Ohio this November. And I have videos explaining how you register to vote and how you can vote early in Ohio. So you can check out any of those things.